everyone, and welcome back to Concilium Watch. I'm Nathan, and today on Army Builder Briefing, we are going to be looking at Starmada, the first O12 sectorial. My goal today isn't to show you the only way or even the best way to play Starmada. I'm just here to share some list building ideas that have worked for me. As with all of our Army Builder Briefing videos, we encourage you to play around with Army and find your own styles and strategies that work best for you. All that said, Starmada plays very differently than most other armies in Infinity. Many of these units are very elite, and they will be costed to reflect that. Starmada also doesn't really have any, it doesn't have any for deploying camouflage specialists, which a lot of people really like to have in their armies, but we do get some really interesting alternatives to make up for that. In most of my armies that I play, I try to build towards really flexible fire teams that can be defensive and offensive at the same time. But honestly, in Starmada, that's a little more difficult to achieve. In my opinion, Starmada excels best when focusing on one or the other. So either make an offensive fire team or a defensive fire team. And offense is definitely Starmada's strength. But the defensive options that we get are totally usable. With that out of the way, I'm going to be doing my Army Builder Briefing a little bit differently today. So rather than building a list around a specific idea or like a specific type of link team, I'm going to be more focusing towards building towards a certain mission. So I'm going to be building these lists with specific missions in mind. So let's see how it goes. Let's get started. All right, so we're here in Army 7, and we're going to go over to Starmada, the Bureau Aegis Naval Police Department. Really cool name, really cool idea for this army. So, the first mission we're going to focus on is supplies. So supplies is a mission that's it's a lot of fun, in my opinion. There's basically 3 objectives in the center that we're all going to be trying to get to and pick up the boxes and run away with them. So when building for a list like this, we need a couple of things. We're going to need someone to go pick up the box, obviously. We're going to need people to defend the boxes and make sure the opponent can't grab them before us. And the third thing is, if they get to it before us, we need someone who can go hunt them down and pick it up from them. So, let's see what we can do here. We could go with Andromeda. She's really strong up close, but I think I'm going to be doing something a little different today. First of all, we should make our defensive core. Whenever making a defensive core in Starmada, I always go for the Kappas. They're very familiar to me because I play Pano a lot, so they're basically like Fusiliers, and they get the job done. They have immunity shock, which is okay, but we're going to focus on the missile launcher first. A lot of people really like the multi-sniper rifle, and I totally agree it's like a superior weapon to the missile launcher in most cases. But I find that those extra 2 points usually get used somewhere else, but we will keep that in mind. I'm going to grab the missile launcher. So we've got our main gun, and we could, if we really wanted to go really hard into, lean really hard into making this just a strictly defensive core, we could put another one in there if we wanted. Then we'd have 2 different missile launchers to be watching the board. But if one of them goes down, the other one's kind of a sitting duck once they lose that +3. So I'm just going to go bare bones for this defensive core. So I'm going to grab a couple of regular combi rifle Kappas. And honestly, let's just grab 4 of them. So this is the most bare bones you could possibly get for a defensive core. You've got just the missile launcher, and then everyone else is just hanging out, being orders for everyone else, and giving him that bonus. So, we've got our defensive core for now. We might come back here and upgrade some stuff, but let's see what we get. So, next we need someone to go grab the box, of course, right? I love the blue, not the blue coats. The blue coats are great, but the beta troopers are my favorite unit in all of O12 basically. They're super solid, super quick, and they're heavy infantry with mimetism, which is amazing. And they're just so cool. Whenever I build Harris teams, it's usually around the beta trooper Spitfire. So I think we'll do the same here. And if you have the points, always go for that one with the firewall -3, because it's literally only 1 point. You get so much for just bringing the tin bot. So let's grab that. So now all of our people in the fire team are going to have that firewall, which is really nice. So if the beta trooper goes down, you got to have someone to pick him up, right? So the best doctor that we have, or rather engineer in this case, I guess both, because we're going to be actually grabbing Parvati, if I can find her. Parvati, Circle League star. This is an Aristea character that's really awesome in that game and even better in this game, in my opinion. She's got all sorts of amazing doctor skills. She's also 6'2", so she's just as fast as that beta trooper, which is pretty nice. She has the ability to doctor 2 wounds. So if we end up putting another heavy infantry in here that has 2 wounds, she can heal them all the way up to full, which is amazing. She also has Engineer +3, which is great for this case because we're trying to repair the structure on the beta trooper. Right here. Structure instead of wounds on these guys. So, Engineer +3 means that Parvati is doctoring that beta trooper on an 18. That's pretty great. Or engineering on an 18, which is great. The key here when using the beta trooper is if you ever take a single wound and you have the opportunity to heal, I would go ahead and heal them up right away. Because thanks to remote presence, you've got essentially 5 wounds that you have to take before you're removed from the board. Because remote presence gives you an extra level of unconscious. So, whenever you get the chance, I would suggest healing him up, keeping him at full at all times. So, next we have this firewall, right? So maybe we could put a hacker in there so that the hacker can both defend the beta trooper from hacking attacks and also benefit from that firewall against other hackers. So we could go for a Psycop here. Psycops are wildcards, which are great. But in this case, I think I'm going to grab the Tiango because the Tiango has a little bit more willpower and we can kind of gotcha our opponent because they can hide as something else as Hollow Mask. So we could pretend to be something like Shona Carano or maybe a Psycop and then surprise them by revealing and hacking them back. So if we grab this killer hacker right here, only 23 points, this is pretty good. So now we've got a Harris team that has the ability to fight. We've got Parvati to heal him up and also fight up close. She's no slouch in combat, that's for sure. And then we also have some hacking support that, in addition to supporting with hacking, this 360 visor on the Tiango is amazing because the Tiango can also watch their back in case someone tries to sneak up behind them. So I really like this Harris team here. Their job will be primarily to get to the center. We've got 2 specialists here, both Parvati and the Tiango, to pick up the supply boxes, which is good. And now we need to grab someone who can hunt down someone who comes... Like, if someone else gets the box before us, we need someone to go hunt down the enemy. So we've got a couple of options in Starmada. We don't have any camouflage, so we can't go for that. But we do have a couple AD troops. So we do have We do have the Crusher. The Crusher is really great. It's got combat jump and parachutist, so if they're hiding in the center of the board, we could land there. Boarding shotgun's great up close. But they are a little pricey at 36 points. We'll keep that in mind, but I think I'm going to go for the Nyoka instead. So the Nyoka also has a single, or actually there are two different parachutist profiles. The multi-rifle forward observer or the Red Fury, which is pretty cool. It's a really great weapon for only one SWC, and especially because they've got BS attack +1 damage. I'm thinking for our purposes, it's going to be better to be the forward observer with the multi-rifle, just because we've got options here. So if we're trying to hunt down someone who's taken a box, sure, that's great. We've got a close range weapon. We've even got a surefire way of hitting them if they're like really difficult to hit because they have mimetism -6 or something with that chain colt. And in addition, if the game's going really well in our favor and we don't have to go hunt down anyone, this Nyoka is also a forward observer, so she can just pick it up herself. She could pick up one of the supply boxes herself if she needs to. So right now we've basically got a core idea of what we need for this mission. So at this point we can sort of have some fun in what we bring. We're actually not quite done because I just realized this little red X here means we don't have a lieutenant. Yep, no lieutenant yet. So we could go in and we could grab someone like Saladin. He's really great. He adds another order to our pool, which would really help. But I think I'm going to save him for one of our other lists, potentially. This time I think we're going to just upgrade one of our Kappas. This is pretty unorthodox because we're going to be paying one SWC for this, but I honestly don't find myself using a lot of SWC in Starmada all the time, so I think we can afford it. If we have to change it, we'll go back, but let's go ahead and grab some other stuff. So we have a couple of midfield units that are really great. They don't have camouflage, but they do have visual mods. So we've got the Crushers. These are awesome. They have essentially 2 wounds because they have 1 wound and shock immune and no wounding cap. So they're really durable, especially with Arm 2 and BTS 3. So they have forward deployment on these versions. My favorite one is the one with the light rocket launcher. This is my favorite unit to hold as my reserve because sometimes you can get a really awesome line on an enemy deployment zone or just a fire team that's sort of deployed out because they didn't think that you had any template weapons. So sometimes I like to keep this light rocket launcher Crusher as my reserve, then set it up so that that template could hit multiple people. And it's awesome. It's really great. But in addition, all Crushers are forward observers. So this Crusher could also grab one of the supply boxes and then run away with it. And it'll have the ability to suppress with the submachine gun, which is really great for defense. So I'm really happy with this one, definitely. And then we also have a character. Casanova. He's really cool. He has he's a little weaker just because he has 1 armor instead of 2, but that's pretty minimal. He does have more BTS, which is nice. And he is a master of close combat. He also has mimetism -6, which makes him even scarier in suppressive fire. So he is a specialist as well. So very similarly to this other Crusher, he can grab a box and go hide and go into suppressive fire and do really well. And honestly, like, both of these units could also go hunt down enemy specialists as well. So really feeling strong there. Now, I think, honestly, we're getting to the end of our list, amount of points at least. So I think we should prioritize grabbing some more orders because 11 orders is not amazing. You kind of want to stick to one or the other. So I'm just going to go to the Kuta, or the Kuta, I think is how you pronounce it. We only get one, unfortunately, but this is your standard flash bot. So I'm going to grab that. And then the other option is always going to be the Fuzzbot with the Minesweeper, which doesn't exist anymore. It should just be a deactivator, I think. And the Repeater. So this is going to be something that doesn't really help us too much. It's just literally being an order. And then we have 276. So we don't really have any MSV in this list, which is a problem sometimes. But we do have some units that can maybe hunt down, like Casanova can run in and slice up someone who is smoked out. So that's okay. I think we should bring a bit of our own smoke, just so our beta trooper, who has a Spitfire, and he is really durable, so usually you can try to engage with him out of his optimal range and still survive, which is okay, because Parvati's there to heal him up. But if we want to get him closer, I think the Varangian Guard are going to be our choice here. So I'm going to grab 2, because we can bring 2, so why not? So here, actually, that's perfect. We got 300 points. There are a couple things we can do here. We should definitely rearrange some stuff. I kind of like Casanova being in the first pool because he can go hunt things down if he needs to, get into close combat. Let's stick the Crusher Light Rocket in here because, as I said, I like to put him on ARO duty sometimes, so I don't expect him to live too long. Then we're going to be trying to defend. Let's put the Varangians here. Because we have a parachutist that's going to be starting off the table, I prefer to keep it in the second pool just because people will know for sure that you have something missing if you put it in the first pool. They'll probably guess that you have something missing in the second pool if you only have 4 orders there, but it's a little more... they'll pay less attention to it than if it were in the main pool. So I'm going to stick the parachutist down here because we might not even bring him on until the end of the game or second round. So to refill the first pool, I always like having 10 and 5 if I'm going with 2 combat groups. So I'm just going to stick the Fuzzbot up here because we're going to be trying to defend him the most. So we should be able to always count on this order unless something goes really wrong. And honestly, I'm feeling pretty good about this. What I will say is that we have some SWC left. If you want, you can go in here and turn one of these Kappas into a hacker. Now, you do have to keep in mind that this is sort of a liability because someone could launch a pitcher over at you and use a killer hacker to kill your hacker in the link. But, I mean, there's risk and reward with anything in Infinity. If you wanted, you could grab 2 of them, and then that way you've got 2 arrows coming back to maybe help each other. So that's an option. The submachine gun also gives them some extra ammo types, which is really nice, because you might need shock or AP to deal with some units later in the game. So yeah, if you wanted to go for 2 hackers here, that's great. If you don't, then leave them out and just keep them all normal. Alright, so we already did our supplies list, which was a very standard like defensive core fire team and then an aggressive Harris. This time, I think we should go... Let's do one for the Armory. So the Armory is going to be a mission where you're trying to take a room. And so it's going to be an infinitely tall room in the center of the board. You need to get to it, either use a specialist to open up the doors and then all 4 of the doors open, or you can use a close combat weapon to basically break your way through the door and just open one. So the nice thing about this kind of mission is it's going to be something that favors really aggressive play by getting into that room and then really holding it down because you've got so many scary units in there. And that infinitely tall building will really help us because Starmada does not have very many like very long range attack capability other than like a Kappa HMG or like maybe a Nyoka HMG. So, because we have a lot of really close range weapons, that shadow, if it will, of that building will really help us get close and not have to worry about long range arrows too much if we deploy correctly. So I think this is a perfect opportunity to show off my favorite lieutenant in this army. Hector is insane. He is just insane. He's not that amazing when he's alone, but he still does work, I'll say. But when he's in a fire team, he's really great. He's got the X-Visor, which helps him with the short range of his weapons. And the thing that's really crazy is Lieutenant plus 1 order, along with Strategos level 1. So what this means is that he gets 2 lieutenant orders, and both of them get turned into regular orders. So this guy's like the king of playing a 10-unit list, like a single combat group list. Because that single combat group will now have 12 orders to work with. Now, it's kind of a tough choice sometimes between the plasma rifle or the Spitfire version, because that Spitfire is very cheap, and again, you'll be always looking for more points in Starmada. But I do think that the plasma rifle is super worth it in this specific mission, because the plasma ammunition is going to be doing blast. So if we have to fight our way into the building, that thing's going to just destroy any sort of fire team that's holed up in there, because the room itself is only 8 inches by 8 inches. So depending on what kind of cover is inside, there might be some units that are bunched up and they'll just get torn to shreds by the plasma. He's also got grenades, so if you don't want to engage in person, you could sort of like spec fire grenades, which is a totally viable option. Up close, actually, his phys stat is higher than his ballistic skill, so maybe if you need a better, like a higher roll, then using a grenade might make sense in ARO especially. So he's also got a nanopulsar, which is great. Because sometimes the key to retaking a room when someone else has already taken it, sometimes you just have to get those hits in and you have to trade up. Now, Hector, we don't really want to put him in too far in harm's way, but we've got some options here. He also brings the Firewall Timbot on his own, which is great, because he is a heavy infantry. And very importantly, he's got the explosive close combat weapon, which is what will easily destroy that door to let us inside. So, if we're putting Hector as our big guy in a fire team, Hector is a wild card, but he can only join Nyokas or Beta Troopers. And Nyoka are the sort of budget option here. You could probably fit more things into a Nyoka link, but I think we're going to go back to my old favorite of the Beta Troopers. As always, I usually go for the Spitfire. This time we don't have to grab the Firewall because Hector's already got one. So we'll save 1 point. I'm going to grab that. The Beta Trooper, again, is very good in this mission because he's got the 2 nanopulsars. And then in a fire team, that's going to be 3 nanopulsars. So if you really, really have to clear a room, you could sort of sacrifice the Beta Trooper, blast the room with nanopulsars. Ariadna would hate this because they're so low on BTS. And then, because the Beta Trooper is so durable, thanks to remote presence, he might just survive, to be honest. So, because we might be putting him in harm's way, let's go ahead and grab Parvati again. Parvati, again, very great for this kind of mission and for this kind of pairing. Especially because now Hector, if he goes down to no wounding cap, then Parvati can heal him all the way up to full 2 wounds, which is insane. I'm sure an opponent who has finally worked him down to that kind of weakened state, they'd just be devastated once Parvati just brings him back up. So, again, we're going to sort of employ that hacker defense rule here. This time, I think I am going to grab the Psychop. Not because it's better or anything, but again, this nanopulsar is going to be really useful if we have to sacrifice something to clear the room. So I'm going to grab... I think the Killer Hacker is still the better choice here, just because we're trying to defend rather than attack. And then we could grab another Psychop, but I think I'm going to go for a Tiango again. We already have the Killer Hacker here, so I'm going to just grab the cheapest one. Yeah, because we might run out of points pretty quick. When you can see we're already at almost 200 points, and we've only built our 1 fire team. So we might be needing some points later. But the nice thing here is the jammer. Again, if you hollow mask them as something, your opponent might not think you have a Tiango, and even if they think you have a Tiango, they might think you have the hacker. So they don't know that you've got the jammer. And if someone is trying to get into the room and they're like trying to open the door or blow up the door, you can then jam them for basically free by revealing, and suddenly their whole advance might get halted by that moment, which would be great. All right, so we have a core fire team. We could go for another Harris. Now, in the last list, we put together a Beta Trooper Harris. Don't think we're going to be able to afford that this time, so let's go with the cheapest Harris we can put together in this army. Blue Coats. Blue Coats are really awesome. The Biometric Visor and Discover +3 is really great versus like aliens who have, like the Shazvasti who have their Speculo Killers, or even against Hakislam who has their Fidays. Really great unit for discovering those guys. And because Discover +3 doesn't specify anything, you can use it to discover camo as well, which is great. They have CC20. Natural Born Warrior combined with CC20 is great, especially when you combine it with the Paralysis CCW, because they're going to be hitting on a 20, with no exceptions, at least when it comes to martial arts. And then your opponent's going to be at a -6. So I've even had Blue Coats take on Shinobu and win in close combat, which is really amazing. They aren't going to be killing with that Paralysis close combat weapon, but once you've immobilized them, it's much easier to go in with the Shock close combat weapon and finish them off, because you're not worried about dying yourself at that point. So normally when I build with these guys, you're going to be tempted to grab this cheapest one, which has the double adhesive launcher. Really great in a link because it's burst 3. But for a mission like this, we really want to kill. I mean, it's great for the police to be taking prisoners, but in this case, we need them out of our room. So we're going to go for some more lethal options. We've got the boarding shotgun, which is going to be great because it's got template weapons. Again, I've mentioned it multiple times now. You need templates to be able to clear the room. And we could grab something else, but I think I'm going to real quick grab one of our wild cards, the Psychop. Psychop has a really great option here with MSV1 and a multi-marksman rifle. It's not going to be as amazing up close, but it's a decent weapon, and if you've got problems where you're dealing with heavy armor or someone with dogged who doesn't have shock immune, this unit's going to be great. And specifically, this unit's going to be great for dealing with smoke. Because if you have an opponent who is smoked out the room, it might be a little difficult. The Psychop will be shooting back at a -6, but it's always good to have the option, especially because since you can see through, that means you're allowed to fire off those nanopulsers regardless. So we've already used our full AVA of Psychops now. Really wish we had more, to be honest. They're great. So I think to finish this off, we'll grab another blue coat. For now, let's just grab the submachine gun. It's a great up-close weapon. Heavy riot stopper is great. And we'll see where this goes. So, again, we're getting towards the end of our points here. Let's go with... let's grab a Lawkeeper. So the Lawkeepers are super fast. 8-6 move. They've got a motorcycle. They are impetuous, so they won't gain cover, but they do have mimetism to help with that. This is going to be a unit that won't necessarily be able to come into the room all the time. Like, you could dismount them and come in. I guess now with the changes to how you can move through things half as small, like at least half your base size, then the Lawkeeper could definitely go into the room, so that works. But this is just going to be a really easy piece to get into that midfield, just because we're going to be wanting all the orders we can for these guys to move out. So I think we're going to go with one of these Lawkeepers. The boarding shotgun would be great up close. Even the combi rifle would be pretty good. But since we've barely used any SWC yet, it's kind of awkward. I think I'm going to go for the Red Fury. And there are two options. One has the side bot. I think every time you can, always try to grab that side bot, because it's an extra little light riot stopper. Sometimes your opponent will be confused as to which one they should try and take out first, because they'll be concerned. You've basically got everything covered here. You've got templates in the form of the light riot stopper and the chain rifle and the Red Fury. So if your opponent is like, okay, I need to dodge the template of the light riot stopper because otherwise I'll get glued down, then just blast them with the Red Fury as well. Or vice versa, like if they want to shoot back and you really have to get a hit in, switch to that chain rifle. So really feeling good about this unit for this kind of mission because, again, it's got the templates. It's also got a multi-pistol if you have to get up close in the bad range of the Red Fury. And, they're totally decent in close combat as well with the Paralysis CCW. So, not many points left. We'll go ahead and grab the Kuta again. That's the one I prefer. Now, we have 9 points left. We could grab the Fezbot again, but then it's just going to be in a second pool. There's a little bug there. Should have gone into another pool. So instead of doing that, I think I'm going to go over here and upgrade the blue coat. So submachine gun's great, but what if we had a Red Fury? That gives us more options where the Psychop does have burst 4 on the multi-marksman in a Harris, but the blue coat is burst 5, which is great. So this list is extremely aggressive. No arrow to speak of, which might rub some people the wrong way. But, like I said, you've got that room, that infinitely tall room, to help block line of fire to things, and you can maybe use the Lawkeeper as like a throwaway piece, like move up in the shadow of the building, then move around the building to try and blast away some sort of arrow piece that's locking down everything else. But I've actually used this list a bunch of times. I had a lot of fun with it. And it's really great just being fully aggressive And Parvati is really the glue that holds this fire team together because she can heal all of them in a really meaningful way. All right, for our final list here, I think we're going to go to another classic mission, Acquisition. So, Acquisition is a mission that has 3 objectives in the center of the board. The one in the very center is a tech coffin, and the other 2 are consoles, I believe. So the goal is to press the buttons and control the consoles by keeping a specialist within base-to-base contact with it. And then the big points happen at the very end of the game where you need to have someone in contact with that center console. So, let's see what we can do here. So because we need something like big and beefy to be on that center console at the end, we could go for something like a bronze. The bronzes are super cool. They've got total immunity, which is awesome. Really tanky. They are very expensive though. I think we'll save the bronze for another time. And why don't we just go for the biggest gun there is, the Zeta. The Zeta is the tag of Starmada and of O12. There aren't any more tags for them yet. It's a really great attack piece just because it's got a straight up hyper rapid magnetic cannon, which is going to be 5 dice using, I think, HMG ranges. But it's just a really great piece. Now, we have a couple of options here. We could grab the one that's just on its own. We could go for the NCO, or we could even grab the Lieutenant. Lieutenant would be cool because we've got we'd have another order. You could do the same with NCO, but that's a lot more points. Like, paying 4 points for NCO seems a bit iffy. So I think what we're going to do is we're actually going to bring Cho into this. So let's go for the Lieutenant. And there Cho is. So there's a bit of a debate about this, right? So technically, I think if you grab the NCO Zeta and Cho as your Lieutenant, it's technically, I think, 1 point cheaper. But I think this is the better way to run it just because you now have an extra specialist. So let's grab a Kappa Fire team again. We're not going to have too many points because the Zeta is pretty costly, so we're going to have to go for one of our cheap links. So again, normally I like to go for the missile launcher, but sure, what the heck, let's go for the multi-sniper rifle this time. Let's see if we can afford it. So, I know I said that normally it's better in Starmada to stick to very specific roles for your fire teams and not trying to mix, but I'm going to break my own rule here and grab an HMG just because a Burst 5 BS-12 unit can still get work done. And in this mission where we really need to get someone to that center console, it might be useful. I'm not expecting to use this HMG until the end of the game in case everything's gone wrong, but we'll see. Then we could just grab a couple more Kappas. Not sure why it keeps on creating these new combat groups, but we'll go for that. And then why don't we create a Nyoka Harris this time? This is another cheap Harris, but not as cheap as the Blue Coats. So these guys are kind of fun because they've got Climbing Plus, and they have +1 damage on their weapons. So if you've got a really tanky unit that is camping that final objective, these guys might be able to crack that armor. I really like the heavy rocket launcher, usually. But since we already have some aero here, let's try the HMG. I think this is kind of a mistake. I think that HRL is probably better in this situation, but I need someone to be our point man, and the HMG's dice amount might just be a bit better. So I'm going to grab the Forward Observer in case we have to press the button at the end of the game. It's also got a multi-rifle, which is great for, again, cracking armor, because you could use the AP mode, and it's a damage 14 multi-rifle at that point. And then we could grab someone else here, like another multi-rifle, but that's a little boring. We're out of SWC at this point, so we can't go and grab that heavy rocket launcher anyway. So, if we want a weapon that can hit hard and costs no SWC, always go for this Psycop MSV1 multi-marksman rifle. Again, this is going to be helpful for cracking armor, and MSV is always going to be useful for taking on smoke, because it would really suck to get to the end of the game where you're trying to get someone off that center console and someone just throws smoke and now you can't do anything about it. So in that case, you can try to maybe swap the Psycop into your 5-man fire team and then just shoot them off the objective, because the 6th sense from the fire team will negate the -6 for shooting through smoke. So again, we're hitting that 250 points cap here. So this is where we start to sort of fill things out. We'll go ahead and grab our faithful flash bot and a baggage bot. Again, the baggage isn't going to do much except just be in order for us here. And I'm a big fan of the crushers, so I'm going to grab one of them as well. We could go for an Epsilon, but we don't have enough SWC for them anymore. So since we have the points here, we could go for a combat jump, but I think when we're using a list like this, I think having it on the board is going to be better in this case. And I like the multi-rifle for having a bit extra range rather than the SMG or the boarding shotgun in that case. Panzerfaust would be nice, though. I think we're going to stick with this. We only have 2 points left, which is just enough to give us a paramedic over here. So now we have... we didn't bring any way to heal the Zeta, which is probably a problem. But we still have some options should the Zeta go down. And we don't have to worry about the Zeta going down too much because we've got Cho as our chain of command. I think the goal here is going to be to use the Zeta as much as possible and try to kill key units. And then if we get to at the very end, put the Zeta on that final objective. That's going to be really nice. If the Zeta goes down, we're going to have to fall back on the Nyokas, which can definitely get the job done. They're basically better Kappas in the sense that they have more abilities, but they don't necessarily shoot better, but they do hit harder, which is great. We have options here where if everything goes horribly wrong with the Nyokas, we can always re-up this main fire team. If the sniper goes down, we can move the Psycop into the main fire team to give them that +3 bonus for the 5-man again. So I like that. In this case, I think... should we put Cho in the second pool? I think, honestly, we're going to keep Cho in the main pool just in case if the Zeta goes down and everything, like literally everything goes horribly wrong. Cho will have enough orders to march up the field and maybe, fight our way to one of the objectives or maybe that final console or the final objective in the very center. So I think I'm happy with this. We could sort of play around with this and downgrade this Crusher. Maybe that means we'll be able to grab a... Yep, we could grab a Varangian Guard then. So maybe that's a better choice. It's up to you, really, at that point. I like having the multi-rifle and the Crusher, as I said, because of the extra range. But if you're just trying to put them in suppressive fire, then it's going to be the same range regardless. So that concludes my army builder briefing for Starmada. Let me know what you think in the comments. I know that there are some weaknesses to some of these lists, but I do think that for the specific missions that I built these lists for, I think they definitely have the capacity to complete the mission. And that's really all that matters at the end of the day when you're playing a mission for Infinity, especially in a tournament. So I know that Starmada has a lot of hurdles for some people to get over. Like, a lot of people really, really want those midfield camo specialists. But, I mean, coming from someone who plays, like, NCA, for example, you can definitely make a list work that doesn't use those units. And it's very difficult for people to wrap their heads around Starmada lists because you sort of have to put your mindset into foregoing those things that you always want in your Infinity lists. But I would really encourage you guys to give Starmada a try. We will be putting out a full review of this sectorial at some point in the future. And yeah, if you would just, we'd really appreciate it if you guys subscribed and hit the like button and commented, because we want to hear from you and we want to give you what you guys want. Have a great day, everyone.